Hi everyone, Dr. Sunil Dand, internal medicine physician. Welcome to another video. I would like to talk about a very serious medical condition that has shown an alarming rise in very recent statistics. This data is from the United Kingdom, and as I've said many times before, I know I have a lot of viewers here in the United States. When we're looking for answers to scientific and medical questions, we have to be getting accurate data, and unfortunately accurate data is very difficult to obtain from the United States. So it's best to look at data from the European countries which keep accurate data, and you can almost guarantee that for many issues, especially related to trends over the last couple of years, what you see in Europe is soon replicated in the United States. So this condition is potentially a fatal condition. It can range from mild symptoms to very serious and even unfortunately death. What am I talking about? Blood clots, ranging from small to very severe life-threatening blood clots. Take a look at this data. So this was published in The Independent, a very large United Kingdom newspaper. Alarm over rise in blood clot deaths as charity calls on NHS, that's the National Health Service of the United Kingdom, to publish data. This article was published within the last few days. Vital information gathered about a serious condition is still not being published 3 years after the start of the pandemic, a charity has said. Thrombosis UK has warned that deaths involving blood clots are higher than expected, as it called for more transparency over the work hospitals are doing to reduce the risk for patients. Well, needless to say, basic transparency should be the fundamental cornerstone of everything in medicine and science. Before the pandemic hit, hospitals were regularly publishing data on the number of patients who had been risk assessed for blood clots. In March 2020, the NHS in England took the decision to suspend the data collection on venous thromboembolism as it focused more on the pandemic emergency at the time, but the data collection and publication is yet to resume. Well, that is absolutely unacceptable. This many years into it, the data collection still hasn't resumed. Why not? The charity said that data shows how many VTE, that's venous thromboembolism cases, are missed in hospitals. This can highlight where clinicians may need extra support to help them prevent avoidable blood clots. It comes as the charity warned of a rise in the number of deaths linked to blood clots. So what are the actual alarming numbers here? What is the latest data for blood clots? Data from the NHS show that 14,846 people aged 19 or over died in England from a venous thromboembolism in 2021 to 2022. In 2019 to 2020, this figure stood at 12,457. According to my calculation, that is a 19%, so basically a 20% increase in blood clots. That is a staggering number. Thrombosis UK chief executive said this hidden crisis is breaking families and costing thousands of lives across the country. There is a need for NHS England to reinstate data collection. Well, absolutely, there is a need for that immediately. Then they describe individual cases, including a gentleman here who lost his mother when the case was missed. This was actually reported in another publication here, Wales Online, which reported on the same story within the last few days. This tragedy here of this man who lost his mother. Despite having many symptoms of a pulmonary embolism, she was discharged home and died 3 days later. Then the article, the link to which I have shared with you down below, focuses on some solutions. They talk about how urgent action is required to improve training for trainee healthcare professionals to include the common signs of blood clots. That to me seems like a very basic thing. I think all healthcare professionals should learn that very early on in their training. They talk about different blood tests that can be used initially, including a D-dimer blood test. Over the next few years, we are investing £100 million, that's almost $125 million, in imaging capacity in acute settings, which will enable quicker access to these tests, so issues such as blood clots are picked up earlier. And they did ask the NHS in England when the data collection would be reinstated. So that is a staggering increase right there. 20% increase. What a tragedy. 20% increase in fatal blood clots. Let's talk a little bit about blood clots and the symptoms that one can get and how they are diagnosed. Obviously, as a hospital doctor, this is something I see and deal with a lot. Blood clots in the legs, typically called a DVT, deep vein thrombosis, present with pain, swelling, redness, usually in one leg. They are diagnosed with an ultrasound scan. Those blood clots can potentially break off and go up to the lungs and cause what we call a pulmonary embolus. And symptoms can range from very mild chest pain, shortness of breath, to being basically fatal. Pulmonary emboli can be very serious indeed, and they are diagnosed with a special type of CT scan. Blood clots, of course, can cause strokes. Now, I'm not sure whether this data was including blood clots which cause strokes, but usually blood clots which cause strokes form higher up. It's very unusual for a blood clot which forms in the leg to go up to the brain. It would take an anatomical deformity like a hole in the heart for that to happen. Often blood clots which cause strokes can occur in the neck, and if you're worried about a stroke, we all should know the symptoms of strokes, including weakness, usually on one side of the body, speech disturbance, visual disturbance, confusion, headache. Strokes are diagnosed usually with CTs or MRI scans. The blood test that they touched upon there, the D-dimer test, can be a very good initial screening tool to look at the possibility that someone has a blood clot before you do a scan. But if there's any doubt whatsoever, a scan is the gold standard. Now let's talk about this alarming data. Why has this occurred, this 20% increase in fatal blood clots? As I've said many times before, when you're looking at data like this and you're trying to ask medical scientific questions, you have to take a step back and look at the whole picture. What has changed over the last 2 to 3 years? Well, of course, we've had a pandemic. Could the virus be anything to do with this? Could there be any other change in behaviors? We know one of the biggest risk factors for getting blood clots is being sedentary. A lot of people have been more sedentary, but typically one, especially at a younger age, would have to be extremely sedentary for blood clot risk to increase. We worry more in the elderly or those who are debilitated for any other reason, basically bedbound. But of course, being sedentary would be a question that would have to be asked in anyone who has come in with a blood clot. Then let's think, what else has changed? Could there be any drugs involved, medical drugs, any therapeutics which have increased the thickness of the blood? These are all questions on the table when we're looking at this type of data. And of course, although there is a call for more transparent data here, we have to be grateful that at least the United Kingdom collects this data, because there's many countries, including the United States, that don't even collect accurate data in the first place. So I hope we really get some answers on this, because 20% is not a figure to be taken lightly. We're talking about fatal blood clots. We're talking about tragedies. And in fact, over the last couple of years, all you have to do is a Google search to see that many celebrities out there have been affected as well. There have been several reports of famous people who have been affected and hospitalized with blood clots. So let me know your thoughts down below. Have you been affected by a blood clot? Do you know anyone, any friend, family member who has been affected? Do drop a comment down below. Thanks everyone again, Dr. Sunil Dan. Check out my online course and my uncensored platform. Those links are down below. Remember, one of the best things you can do for you and your family's health is to be empowered. Make the right decisions every single day so that you stay as healthy as possible. Hit the like button if you like this video and the bell button for more similar videos in the future. We will talk again